Buenos días a todos. Hoy vamos a hablar de un tema oscura. Stop. So we're going to be talking about the divided mind, and how this is intrinsic to narcissism. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and then I'm going to take your questions. The core of narcissism, as many of you are aware, is to separate self from self. Wait. I had this vision the other day whilst I was doing a meditation. And I saw a person as a circle, and then the circle split and there was two persons and they were divided. This is, where is this? Only glasses. This is 10 pesos from Mexico. And there's some Mesoamerican artwork right there, which has come straight from the unconscious. Right there. Can you see that? Go that way. There we go. So what happens with the divided self? You have an authentic self, and then you have a false self. And the false self is the essence of narcissism. Now, usually I'm the guy who dogmatically will say, stop using narcissism for anything and everything that you don't like. But today I'm going to present the case that actually to behave narcissistically, not as a person with narcissistic personality disorder, but to simply be narcissistic is a natural response to a non-natural world, is a semi-adaptive response to a very difficult, confusing environment that we as human beings, as a human animal, are not a good evolutionary match for. And that it's actually our technological, quote unquote, progress and movement forwards in civilization that's making it harder and harder for us to be one thing, and easier and easier and more and more rewarding to be two. So those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that the essence of the narcissistic worldview is called splitting. This is a Freudian, Freud-defined defense mechanism to stress. It's one of the infantile defense mechanisms. It is formed in infancy. Mummy is altogether good or mummy is altogether bad, because I can't deal with the shades of gray of my mother being this way. It could be mummy, it could be daddy, it could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be an institution. It's altogether good. And that's the end of the story. It is good because I say it is good, or it is altogether bad. And that's called splitting. So you've split. You split people, you split environments, you split philosophies, you split worldviews, and you become divided and divisive. That's the narcissistic worldview. There is the actual authentic self, but the environment doesn't permit authenticity. It punishes authenticity. It makes authenticity painful. Being a singularity, being authentic, a single, simple entity is painful, exhausting, humiliating, a source of persecution, a source of frustration, a source of humiliation. And when you are two, my child, if you could just divide yourself, if you could just not be you, don't be you, be two, then we can accept you. I don't, you have feelings. Okay, boring. Oh, you have wants and needs. Oh, tedious. Oh, you can perform. You can make me laugh. You can make me money. You can be interesting. You could be libidinous, energized, a source of charisma, a source of power in the world, this interests me. This disinterests me. I don't want this. And so the authentic self falls. I must get glasses. I think this is Quetzalcoatl. I think this is Quetzalcoatl. It's definitely a wing. Oh, fuck, I need glasses so badly. I had glasses and I lost them. You know, the winged serpent. So that one goes back. The authentic self recedes, it atrophies. You don't need me. There's no point me being here. Whenever I show up, you get angry with me. You get frustrated with me. So then the false self shows up. Now, what is this? What's this? What's this? Are you born with this? No. So this is learned. Let's use the word alien here. This is alien. This is not you. This is you. Look how small it is relative to this. Very important. Very important. This, the real you, not important. It drifts away, it atrophies. This is what's learned. This is what's within you. This was what was born into you. This is the authentic self, what you were born with. This is what was learned. Where are you learning from? Well, you can't learn from you. You learn from culture. What's culture? Well, I don't know. It's the grouped habits and patterns of behavior of, if we're talking about human culture, of human beings across time and geography, that people think is important, but 9 times out of 10, it isn't. You know, I think when I kill my prisoners of war, that their blood causes it to rain and makes the crops grow. It doesn't. It doesn't. But I think that's culture. My language. Well, you didn't invent, this is you. You didn't invent language. Your language is forced upon you. Language is burnt into your brain. It's imprinted. So the authentic self is back here, and this is the imprint. Can you see how the essential nature of being a human being on the planet, from the point of view of the divided mind, is narcissistic? This is performance. I'm performing right now. This is a performance. If I was born into a box and I never spoke to anybody for 46 years, what language would I speak now? How would I know to look into that? I wouldn't know anything. I'd be nothing. Presumably I would just act like a primate, I guess, because I wouldn't know anything else. Or I would be semi-catatonic, I presume. So everything that I do know was given to me. It's not from me. We tattoo our children like this. We cut your face at 13 and rub ash into it. We stretch your neck. We break your feet. Even listening to Manele is culture. And that has history. And that has influence. And you can track geography and history through the sounds in music. And that's given. That's given to us. So if we agree the narcissistic personality disordered individual is split self from self, the essence of narcissism is rooted in an infantile defense mechanism called splitting to an environment that is unbearably painful, where the cognitive dissonance that the painful environment and the mixed messages being received is too much. And so there's just this split, like a deep permanent split. If we agree that the authentic self is left to one side because it's just not being encouraged, it's not being rewarded in my childhood environment. In fact, it's being punished because it makes mummy and daddy uncomfortable. It makes my primary caregivers angry, or violent or upset or persecutory. And what we're left with is what I'm taught, which is from without. Excuse me. This comes from within. This comes from without. This is an important distinction. We should talk in these terms more. Sometimes people say to me, "Do you think religion is good?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that concisely." And I've come up with a way of answering it concisely recently. Religion is good when it comes from within. When it comes from without, it's a problem. It's a problem. If this is spontaneous and came from me, and it's my religion and it's my spirituality, it's probably going to be a fairly good match for the thing that I am in terms of my genetics, my genetic expression, and my experience. If it comes from without, the box that you've created, the cookie cutter shape that you've created to cut cookies, doesn't match me. I'm not that shape. I'm not that thing. I'm a different thing. So broadly speaking, what I'm saying here is that as technology moves further and further forward, and we become more and more civilized and more safe, this is happening to all of us. Your authenticity is utterly meaningless. And to modern society, it's not meaningless to you. You still have a soul. You still have a relationship with God or whatever you believe, the universe, a higher force, the Almighty. And obviously humanity is going through some sort of a transition period at the moment. But the point is that we're in a narcissistic process right now. How does modernity and civilization and technology make us more and more narcissistic? I want to answer that. And I just gotta get my thoughts together, man. Yesterday, there was a video that popped up on YouTube and I lost it. I only watched 15 seconds. It was bright outside and then I couldn't find it. But what it was saying was that they'd used special computer programs to detect the similarities and differences in musical subgenres since the year 2000 to the year 2025. As technology and the capacity, I can make music. I can make music on my MacBook if I want to. I can make I have done. I made really horrible sounding hardcore techno for me to lift weights to. You can do that. It's not hard to do. As a timeline, as technology increases in its capacity to serve humans, gets cheaper and more accessible, the expression of different musical tastes and possibilities doesn't expand, it shrinks. It shrinks. Do you remember in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where Gene Wilder walks away from the group down a corridor, but it's an optical illusion. And even though he's walking away, it actually gets smaller and smaller and smaller for him. So he has to stoop lower and lower. So as we're moving from the past into the future, it should be the technology is just, oh my God, I'm so free. I can do anything. And actually the opposite seems to be true. It seems to actually be slowly squishing people because the feedback loops are tighter. So if you imagine like what it would be like to make music in the 60s, you'd have to pass through multiple gatekeepers in order to even be able to record, to get access to a recording studio. Everybody's house is a recording studio now. Then you would do your best to put something together. The gatekeeper, presumably like a manager or whoever ran the recording studio, would be like, I'm not releasing that because that's waste of money. You can release, it's free to release music now. You just put it on SoundCloud. It's free. So there was cost. So there was quality control, and then you release it. And I'm bluffing here. I don't know how it works, but presumably somehow it gets picked up by the radio stations, and you would need radio stations, and DJs would then have been very powerful. Radio stations and DJs of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s would have been like the top flight podcasters of today. They could make or break you. They would be their gatekeepers and their kingmakers as well. And what you ended up with was a huge amount of musical diversity. Yes, they were competing. Yes, they're ripping off each other's sounds. Yes, sometimes things did sound a little bit like one band has got this riff here and they're taking it. Okay, fine. But the fact remains that as time moves forward, there is more and more sampling. So if you look in the top 20 of popular music, it's more and more focused on the past. How many top 20 tracks? Like there's spring break here, right? So there's really where I am in Mexico. So these kids at age 2021, the tracks they'll listen to will have been like house music hits or hip hop hits, or even dance hits. And they've rewritten them as dance hits again. They're not even sampling it to put it on a hip hop track. They're like, well, that was a dance hit in 95. Let's just release it again. And they barely change anything. It's so. I've lived in Ibiza before, and I've met DJs who make their own music, and then I listen to their music, and then there'll be like a certain scene and a certain crowd and a certain club, and I'll be like, hey, there's a guy like he goes by the name Black Coffee. As I listen to some of his tracks, and they'll be out and about, and I'll be like, hey, you can't make music that is just like a track from his that barely changed and re-released with another name. But of course you can. My point is, things in a high-tech society don't diversify, they homogenize. They don't diversify, they conform. One last, because I'm aware this could sound like a boomerish rant against technology. One last example. Have you all noticed that when you're on Instagram, when you're on TikTok, there is, in the Anglosphere, in the English-speaking world, we all kind of have the same sense of humor. You know what's going to hit if you're going to try to produce content that is funny, or you're consuming content that is funny. You know what's going to work and what's not going to work, because there really is one type of sense of humor on the internet. And you could say, no, it's polarized. There are right-wing stand-up comedians and left-wing stand-up comedians. If you turn if I change the language of what they're speaking, the pacing, the delivery, the style, the framing is not. That is a sign of a very small penis. I hope you can all hear that. Can you hear an extremely loud a motorbike that's been broken sound louder? Otherwise, I would have just pointed at the door and said, see that door? That door is a sign of an extremely small penis. But look, it's the signifier and the signified. That the door. There was a loud motorbike. There was. Anyway, there's sense of humor becomes homogenized. Everything becomes conformist. It doesn't diversify. We don't become more diverse. We become more conformist. The feedback loops are tighter. I can make a track today, release it tomorrow, and know within 3 days whether it's going to hit or not, based on how many people used it as an audio track on TikTok. Is it trending or not? And my veracity, my greed is so high, because when people do well, they do well to the tune of 14 million, replays. It's not like, oh yeah, 400 people really fucking love that track I did. It's millions, and it's across the globe. In that type of an environment, where does authenticity go? I'm making the case, perhaps not in a very concise way, that as you see with the narcissist in their abusive environment, where their authentic self becomes less and less relevant, and the performative, grandiose, highfalutin false self becomes the only thing that is seen and rewarded, because now they've done that because they're splitting and they've divided self from self in order to cope with a painful, traumatic childhood environment. Via exactly the same mechanics, we are all struggling to cope with what is becoming a less and less It's just not very important to be authentic. It's not even very important to be good. It's highly narcissistic. Everything is high. So I mean narcissistic with a little n, with a little n. I mean narcissistic in its mechanics. I'm not saying all of these people are narcissists and they all have MPD. I'm saying if it's performative and non-authentic, you have begun to behave in a way that is purely reaction seeking. It's not about anything that you authentically want to say. You're trying to get reactions from people. Social media is about getting likes and follows. Oh, to wit, to woo. I should thank you all. My video analytics, when I reached out via the email list and said, guys, please help me, we got and I was reaction seeking. It was very narcissistic. It was very manipulative. You all knew I was a narcissistic psychopath, and now we finally have truth. I wanted help. I don't know if you remember that email. It was like 2 weeks ago. I said, please, can you go when it's live, drop a like on it, drop a comment. So I've got the analytics. It's 4.4 times higher than usual. And I'm very happy about that. I'm grateful. So thank you. But what have I just done? I've just coerced myself and coerced people who follow me. It's not awful. Like, I'm not saying, oh my God, what an awful thing we've all done. To act in a way that pleases an algorithm. Yes, ultimately, more people get to see it. More people find out about narcissistic abuse. Yes, I'm not saying that's not the case, but it's still a reaction-seeking behavior. Do you take my point? As we move forward with the tech and the feedback loops that come through social media tighten and get shorter, I think there is evidence that humanity as a whole, even at the top levels, even when we're talking about our elites, our governments, our rulers of countries, I've been saying this since 2015. I think the White House got a YouTube channel in 2013 or 2014, and I went on and made a video about it because I used to be very, very political in the beginning and I just gave up. And I was like, the White House shouldn't have a YouTube channel. The White House shouldn't have a Twitter. The president shouldn't have a Twitter. There should be a gap. There should be a distance. There should be a boundary. We shouldn't have, when I'm talking about tight feedback loops, another way of saying that, that's obviously in the tech, because I can write a tweet and I'll say, everybody from Cornwall is a pasty eating dick. And then very, very rapidly, I've not been to Cornwall for years. I miss Cornwall. It's a very nice place, very pretty. I don't know why I chose Cornwall. I'm going to know, if I open the app, exactly how Cornish people feel about that very, very soon, very, very rapidly, within hours. That's the tech. When we talk about a person who's highly emotionally dysregulated, the gap between the stimulus of something happening and the response is what? Is it very large or is it very tight? If somebody's emotionally dysregulated and a trigger event happens, is the gap, the synaptic gap between the trigger event and their response physiologically and emotionally to it, is it broad or is it narrow? In emotionally dysregulated people, it is narrow. That is a sign of not being well. I'm not persecuting anyone, I'm not condemning anybody. I have bad days. The gap between my triggers and my responses get tight. Like if I've not slept properly, or I don't know, whatever, we all just being human is just sucks. It just sucks here. It's dreadful stimulation. Freudian slip. Dreadful stimulation. I'm clearly enjoying it. Dreadful stimulation. But it shouldn't be tight. It shouldn't be instant. Nothing should be instant. When we're talking global politics, nothing should be fast. It should be slow. Everybody should be slow. Zen. Slow down. Somebody comes in, they walk into your house, they spit on your shoes. Oh, fuck. Well, I'm not bloody wow. To show you something. Wait. Yes, it happened. Okay. So you have a story. Well, because he did this, it means he doesn't respect me, doesn't respect the institution, and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Wait. Yes, he definitely did that. Let's not add story to what has happened. Wait, be patient. Especially, I hope you can hear them. It's like the volume control is broken perpetually. So if it's 7 o'clock at night and they're drunk and loud, it should be slow, and it's not. And technology encourages this acceleration between the trigger and the response. So you'll see on Instagram, and I'll start wrapping this up, and then I'll take your questions. Make your questions one sentence. I'm going to do a question mark. People ask me for my opinion on political events on Instagram, and what I would usually say is, I've not formed an opinion yet. I've not formed an opinion yet. Whatever my first opinion is, at least 40% of the time, it's wrong. And within 48 hours, I'll be like, no, you just didn't know enough. So there's no way I should be responding within 48 minutes. And there's absolutely no chance that I should be responding inside of 48 seconds. That doesn't make any sense at all to do that. Are you in a hotel, says Sophie Lauren? Yes. You can't hear the hallway. You couldn't hear those kids screaming. It might be the kids, young men. It might be maybe the MacBook Pro has like a function on it where it just like cancels that stuff out. We don't want a divided mind. We don't want to be splitting. We want one mind that is functioning effectively to give us, it should reflect accurately the information that we're getting back from reality as much as possible. You want the map you have of the territory to match the territory as accurately as possible. When you have that, you will have something approximating sanity. When you don't have that, you have something approximating insanity. So when people are full of delusion and hallucinations and strange ideas about reality, they're less sane. They're just literally, they're not sane anymore. So the divided mind is something that we should be wary of. Now then, what was that? I can see you in the chats. UG Rose is here, so thank you. Everybody say thank you, UG Rose, for helping to moderate the chat and for keeping strange, angry people at bay, because they must be kept at bay because they're strange and angry. They're furious with me for reasons I cannot begin to fathom. Okay, looking for a question. Are we living in a simulation, says Gem of Jupiter? If you think about it for long enough, in terms of probability, the probability gets higher the longer you dwell on it. I can't put my mind there right now, but yeah, probably. Tuned in late. Question. You were talking about our personal response time between offenses and our reactions. Yes. Thank you, UG Rose. Gracias, UG Rose. Thank you for thanking UG. Okie dokie. Question. Have you ever heard of the idea that forgiveness of self and others cancels karma? No. Whose karma is it canceling? Book of Life incorporates Christianity, Buddhism, and manifestation. I don't know whose karma it would be canceling. If I forgive somebody, it cancels my karma or their karma. Karma is just cause and effect. I don't think inside of a closed system like this simulation, you can have cause without effect. And I think that's all that karma is. So it sounds like slightly magical thinking and spiritual bypassing, unless I need to spend time reading what it is they're talking about, or unless they're using karma in a different way. Paolo Adriao says, love you, UG. What, in your opinion, is the best way to calibrate reality? I don't think you can. Well, reality is reality. I don't think you can calibrate it. Do you mean calibrate your mind to reality? Jamie says, I haven't watched you in a long minute. I'm glad you're doing well. Glad to have you here, Jamie. Thank you. Okay. Read Siddhartha. I liked Siddhartha. You mean the Herman Hesse book? But I much preferred Steppenwolf. Siddhartha felt slightly pretentious to me, where Steppenwolf felt authentic. I'm watching Silence of the Lambs and thinking of you, Richard. Very good, Apex. I'm glad to hear it. What a classic thriller that movie is. Any questions, folks? Make them one sentence long, have them end in a question mark, and I will try and read them with my gammy eyes. What's in Mexico? A lot of the spiritual data banks that and the servers. You know, when you sleep and you're accessing like another server, a lot of them are based here in Mexico. More philosophy, please. Absolutely. Ask me a philosophical question and I will. How are you? I am very well. Thank you, Nell. Have you ever seen The Cure? No, I have heard The Cure. I've enjoyed having The Cure in my ear holes, but I have not seen them with my eye holes. I would like to. Have you ever read any of the Desert Fathers? No. Eastern Orthodox? No, I've never heard of that. That's interesting. The difference between suffering narcissistic abuse first at young age and old. I really like your profile picture. I'm not sure that there is a big difference. I suppose when you are younger, you have less boundaries and less way of filtering what's happening to you. And as you age, you have more filters and more boundaries. Can someone be their own therapist? No. No. Wench has an opinion. Karma is a placebo to placate. My ex-narcissist left me just as I walked into chemo alone. He is living his best life now. Bum, bum. The band The Cure? I assumed that she was talking about the band The Cure. How do you live long term with someone with a lot of narcissistic traits? I don't. You shouldn't. It's unpleasant. What you're telling me is that you're living with somebody who's unpleasant, selfish, arrogant, noxious, persecutory, abusive, deceptive. I could not. I could not. Would not. So are you a narcissist or an educator on the disorder? I don't have narcissistic personality disorder. I definitely have I'm high in trait narcissism. There's a test you can do online. Last time I recommended this, people complained and said that the researchers wanted money. If you keep looking around, you can find a free one. The test is called the D factor test. So it's the darkness factor test, and you can find out what things you have going for you. I would be a much more interesting person or online. I would be a much more interesting online character for you to watch if I was a narcissist. Or a psychopath. That would be cool. I think girls would think I was hot if I was like a diagnosed psychopath. They'd be like, "Ooh, I can save him. He's dangerous." I'm just joking. That's just stereotyping based on truth. Stop it. That's silly. Listen here. Stop being silly. What do you think of Diogenes? Funny? How do you deal with narcissist doctors when admitted in the hospital? Well, you got to be careful because you got to make sure you're getting what you want. You don't want to be punished. Find some allies, appeal to the nurses, maybe appeal to another doctor, maybe try and go to another hospital. I actually have had very few negative medical experiences. I would say none. I've had negative therapeutic experiences, like for psychotherapy, but in terms of when I've been, I very rarely go to hospital. When I do, it's usually because I've been stupid. It's usually something related to martial arts, and the doctors have been great, been really, really good. So, but yes, that's what I would do. Anton Chigurh, yes, one of the best characters from the best books and a really, really good film adaptation. Let's hear it for No Country for Old Men. If you've not read it, you should. If you've not seen the film, you should. It's a great movie. If you have different social selves, like a work persona as opposed to your natural self and around friends and family, is this similar to a divided self? Yes, it's the way in which our culture doesn't really reward authenticity. There's a point I was going to make before, actually. If you look in the celebrity space and the social media space have sort of mutated and morphed. They're not the same, but they are directly linked now. And the one of the most important things you can be nowadays to justify people listening to you talk or listening to your music or listening or consuming your art is not whether it is objectively any good or whether you're a decent character. It's how popular you are. Down from that is how rich you are. So if something could be absolutely garbage or it could be a garbage human being, you could be like, I'm not listening to this person. This person's garbage. And the comments will say, yeah, but he's richer than you, or he's more famous than you, as though wealth and fame is any kind of substitute for moral character. Not to sound like your granddad, but these are indicators that in the last 50 to 70 years, due to technology, we have become more narcissistic as a culture because it's the pure pornography of this person is famous. Why should I listen to them? I don't want to listen to somebody singing about their own genitals. I don't want that. I actually, to be honest with you, I do find that kind of music funny. There was a hip hop track that came out last year. It's called the track is called Pound Town. And I actually personally did find that funny. But if people say, that's not funny, that's degeneracy, I'd be like, oh, okay, fair enough. It probably is. But the answer to it is the pure psychopathic pornography of people love it. And you go, well, I'll just shut my face then. I guess if people love it and it's popular and it's got like however many downloads or however many views, that's the sine qua non for judging whether something has merit or not. Eddie Vedder sings some Cure songs. That sounds nice. I'd like to hear Eddie Vedder sing some Cure songs. Still in Mexico? Yes, I am. No Country for Old Men? Yes, it is. Partly set in Mexico. Great movie. Boomshanker says, do the abused become abusers? Some do, but not all. Yeah. Listen. It's from the windows to the walls. Oh, skeet, skeet, said the Marquis de Sade. Oh, skeet, skeet, god damn. From the windows to the walls. Make the... Yes, exactly. Let's do one more question. Come on, give us a good question. and then I will bugger off. I shall take a little walk. I shall eat some food, and then I will prepare for sleepy times. Can you heal from narcissistic abuse using psychedelics in a healing way? There are drugs that we know from the clinical controlled research that are proving to be helpful with post-traumatic stress. And obviously, narcissistic abuse is a form of complex post-traumatic stress. It seems, go on Google Scholar, look for yourselves. If you don't know how to use Google Scholar, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, show me the papers in Google Scholar that tell me that what this guy said is true. Ketamine seems to be reliable. MDMA seems to be reliable. Psychedelics undoubtedly has helped people, but it has undoubtedly created full psychotic breaks in people as well. Psychedelics are unpredictable. Ketamine seems to be, I don't know, I know the people. I have an inroad for a guy down in London who's a professor who helps with the research, and maybe I'll interview him one day. Ketamine, there are ketamine clinics, MDMA, yes, psychedelics, kids. I did psychedelics when I was younger. I've done it when I was older as well. Once I did it like 10 times between the ages of 18 and 21 when I was younger. I don't think it's good for therapy. You've heard people say it's amazing. You've got a mate who says it's amazing. Okay, when they did their ayahuasca ceremony, ask them if anybody had a psychotic break, because I saw people having breaks. They just were having complete effing breakdowns. These are powerful drugs. You know, I loved Robert Anton Wilson. I loved Terence McKenna. I did not love the legacy of leaving people feeling like psychedelics is something that you can play with. They should be taken very, very, very seriously, especially if you have PTSD, especially if you have CPTSD, especially if you've not been through therapy and you've got a lot of unresolved trauma inside of you. It could be a terrifying experience. So I don't recommend it. I know a girl who started ketamine, and I watched her become progressively more. She's doing ketamine recreationally or ketamine therapy. What's your opinion on weed? Whatever. That's not for me. I don't like it. I don't hang around with people who smoke weed all day. That's for sure. But whatever. Whatever, man. No strong opinion. Microdosing shrooms helped a lot. Yeah. I would say generally, folks, you gotta be very careful. I'm not saying don't do psychedelics. I'm saying respect what it is. If you have no relationship with consciousness going in, it's a bad idea. Fact. You knew somebody who did ketamine. Okay, but I don't know whether you're being sardonic when you write therapy like that, Melissa. I don't know whether you're being like, oh, she was doing ketamine therapy in her kitchen, or whether she went to a clinic. Emotional literacy work helps. Yes, it does. Emotional literacy is a much faster, much safer way of getting it done than taking drugs. Okay, I think we got it. Ladies and gents, I hope that you found that useful. It was a pleasure speaking to you, as it always is. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I really appreciate your time and your attention. Please be careful what you spend your time and attention on. Your time and attention have magical properties. That is all. Goodbye.